Hello. Welcome to another interview with people from Cleveland are dope. And our featured person from Cleveland is Asante Jones. You may have seen him on the screen at some point. I hope you have, because if not, you're missing out on some great talent. Welcome, Asante. Thank you so much for joining me today.
My absolute. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so Asante is from Cleveland, and we're going to talk about his being from Cleveland as well as his career as an actor.
Yeah.
So, which Cleveland neighborhood did you grow up in?
Man, we moved around. We would always kind of work our way back to my grandma's house. So 116th and Union was that area. But my mom and we did like 112th and Buckeye for the bulk of my teenage years, Cleveland Heights for a year, 123rd and St. Clair when I was like a little kid. Um, I lived in Garfield Heights for a minute, over like 131st and Miles, further away than that, but 131st and Miles ish area. Yeah, just everywhere, everywhere.
Okay, but you stayed pretty much on the east side, though, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. East Side, Cleveland proper. Never
Hmm.
lived in one of the suburbs. I wasn't out in Warrensville or Willoughby or Wickliffe, any of
Oh,
them.
you are Cleveland for real, then.
Yeah, no, I'm Cleveland for true.
Okay, I got it. Um, I'm from 189th and Harvard, so
Yeah, yeah, I know that area well. You know,
yeah.
Grace Mount. I went to Grace Mount Elementary, um, and then my brother went to Kennedy for high school. So, you know,
Okay. That's where everybody in my neighborhood went to high school, unless they were bused like me. And you and I both went to, both graduated from John Marshall High School.
correct. Although I did go to Whitney Young for seventh
So
and
did I.
yeah,
Yeah, I went to Whitney Young, seventh through ninth grade.
yeah.
So that was nice because I
I
could
did.
walk to school.
Yeah. I dipped out for a year from Whitney Young. I went to Roxborough in Cleveland Heights for eighth grade. So
Okay.
seventh and ninth, and then Roxborough for eighth.
All right. So you've been all over the place.
Yeah, I went to. I counted them once. I went to 13 different schools between kindergarten and high school.
That's a
13,
lot.
or maybe 11. I think 11 different schools from kindergarten through high school.
Wow, you have me beat. I thought I went to a lot of elementary schools, but that's a
Yeah,
lot.
we got around for sure. For sure.
Right. Um, so congratulations on being inducted into the John Marshall High School's Hall of Fame. That's an honor.
That was so, yes, it was not, that was so random though. I remember getting the email, or maybe it was a Facebook message. I don't know. I got a message that said, we're, happy to inform you that you've been inducted into the John Marshall Hall of Fame. And I was like, we have a Hall of Fame? But then, of course, I was like, why do we have a Hall of Fame? And then I was like, I thank you. I'm very honored.
So did you
Yeah,
go back? Did you go there for a ceremony?
I did. I did. So they informed me, I want to say, let's see if I can get the timelines right here. They informed me in 2016 that I had been inducted. And then the induction ceremony was 2017. So I flew back in October of 2017 for the induction ceremony. And in my induction class was Lige Curry and someone else that I whose name is escaping me, but two members of P Funk got inducted the same class that I got inducted. I was like, man, I got it. Like these dudes are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and
What?
I'm getting inducted into the John Marshall Hall of Fame with members of P Funk. Come on, man. Stop playing. Stop playing.
That's awesome. You're in good company.
Trying to tell you. John Marshall. Come on.
Yeah,
Lawyers. We out
right? Go lawyers.
we out here.
Did you have any favorite teachers that you recall?
I'm positive I did, but like I feel so on the spot now. I'm trying to now recall some teachers. Um, so definitely Mr. Dykes. That was my
For
dude.
sure, Willie Dykes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Dykes, man, that's my dude. I spent a lot of time in the choir room and uh, let's see, messing with the band and
Hmm.
I think I could almost remember. Oh, and then what was the physics teacher name? Dr. Locke. Dr.
Hmm.
Locke, man, that was my dude too. We love Dr. Locke.
Yeah.
He was just such an interesting character. But
Yes.
that I had like probably my least favorite teacher in the history of school was also at Marshall. I won't even bother to mention that name, but
Oh,
um, yeah, I was not a fan.
okay. Well, we can skip mention of that person. That's fine. But yeah, I had Dr. Locke for physics as well,
Yeah,
and Mr. Dykes for band.
yeah.
Uh, were you in drama club?
Of course. Yeah, I'm trying to remember who was the head of the drama club, but I don't recall. But yeah, I was in drama club. Uh, my buddy Randy Campbell was my Randy was my best friend my senior year, and so we both went out for the school play together, and ended up playing best friends in the play. Um,
Oh,
and it was just fun. It was fun. I remember the day that we did the show. It was like 6 periods in a row. Like literally, that was all we did that day was perform for each and every class would come to the auditorium at some point during
hmm.
to watch the show.
Okay. Was that when the acting bug hit you?
No, the acting bug hit me. So I'm gonna take some people way, way back. My cousin was Greg Morris on the original Mission Impossible series back in the 60s. And
Hmm.
Greg, the distinction for Greg was he was the second black series regular on a 1 hour show in Hollywood history, Bill Cosby being the first on I Spy. So when he came along, he was the first Black Series regular in a non-comedic role, so he was very serious. Barney Collier, he was the electronics expert on the Mission Impossible team. So when you see like Ving Rhames in the movie, that is patterned after my cousin Greg. So I remember distinctly at age 7, we drove the Matador station wagon across the country to come visit Greg here in Hollywood, and he was one of the only black families living in Beverly Hills at the time. And um, I remember distinctly at age 7 saying, whatever Greg did to get a swimming pool in his backyard, that's what I'm doing. What's that? I don't know, but I'm going to do that because there's a swimming pool in his backyard. It's like feet from the door. So yeah, I have to do that. And then I went back to Cleveland and started. I want to say I was starting 75. So I was starting second grade, I believe. Um, and so went back and starting the school year, I had to write a little book report on what I did for my summer vacation. And I wrote about how we went to Beverly Hills and visited my cousin Greg. He was on Mission Impossible, but he has a swimming pool in his backyard. And really, the focus of my report was the swimming pool
Of
in the backyard.
course.
And so when I turned it in, the teacher was like, "Greg Morris is your cousin?" I was like, "Yeah, lady, it's great. Yeah, why are you so excited about that?" So that was really kind of how I learned what fame was. Um, it was like, oh, okay, so random strangers know my cousin, and apparently they love him, especially the women. I don't know what's up with that. Acting. Let's find out about that. So I kind of got the bug early, and then really got the bug at Whitney Young. Um, the school play in ninth grade. was Romeo and Juliet, and we didn't do the whole play. We just did Act Two, Scene Two, the balcony scene. But we were reading Romeo and Juliet in English class, and as we were reading it aloud in class, whenever it got to me, I would start doing Romeo with this voice here,
Oh,
and I would break this off, and everybody would like what, and the teacher was like, huh, and um and so I ended up she said, well, we're gonna do the play. Would you be interested in playing Romeo? And I was like, sure, of course I do Romeo. I mean, why would I want to do Romeo? And so I got the role of Romeo based on the fact that I could do a British accent, which really made no sense at all because the play is set in Verona, Italy. So I should have been doing an Italian accent, I guess, but it didn't matter. Um, that
we
was a
automatically equate Shakespeare with British,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's
because
probably
he was British. He was British, and so the performers at the time were British, and therefore, that was the way they all did it. But yeah, like all the girls definitely looked at me differently after I played Romeo. Acting, yeah, okay. Swimming pools and girls, yeah, let's do that.
uh I was in a play in Whitney Young too.
What was the
I
show?
remember wearing a cowboy hat, like on a string, and I had the hat on my back, but I cannot remember what the name of that play was.
It's funny the portions of things that we recall and the things that we don't. Like you remember the cowboy hat, maybe because of how'd you feel about the cowboy hat?
Um, it was different. I, I don't know. It just
Did it
made
feel
me
like
feel like I was doing something out of the ordinary
right?
because
And that's
never
probably
walked
why.
around with cowboy hat on.
Yeah, that's probably why that aspect sticks with you because it was like a costume for you and it's out of the norm. That's
Hmm.
usually the kind of thing that stays with you.
Yeah. And we had a putting on the hits show. Remember putting on the hits where you lip sync?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I was Sheila E in that show.
Okay.
And we were in ninth grade, I think. So I had three other girls on stage with me. One had a guitar, one had a keyboard, and another had a saxophone, and they were supposed to be my band. And we did our thing, and then we lost to some eighth graders who did Motley Crue or something like that.
Oh, boo to the eighth graders. Boo.
So
That.
yeah, Whitney Young was fun times for
Oh
sure.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay. So where did you like to hang out in Cleveland when you were young?
Um. Well. Let's see. So when I was young, like kid, just like my cousin's house. But like as a teenager, the host house was the spot. We go hit the host house up
Forgot
up
about
north.
that one.
Man, that was the joint. Like that because it was always packed and it was always hot in there because there was so many people. But it was just a vibe. It was a vibe at the time, and it was the '80s, and it was a good time up in there. And then young adult like Vels. I can't tell you that I don't think I ever went to Vels where a riot did not break out. Like that was the standard. Like if a
Right.
riot didn't break out, it felt like something was wrong.
All of
I
a sudden, people just started running.
Yeah, well,
Take
see,
off.
that was where I learned because my cousin was a cop, and we were at Vale's one night, and I remember some riot broke out, and everybody jumped up and started running, and he was like, "Nope, the secret, the trick to getting out of this safely is to walk very calmly out of here. So we are going to walk very calmly out of here." And sure enough, you can see everything. When you're just walking, you see everything, all the chairs that were flying, glasses that were being thrown, satellite fight would break out here, break out there, because ultimately people start running, they bump into somebody. Now it's a whole new fight for no reason.
Right. Right.
So just calmly walk out of a situation. And I've been in multiple situations as an adult where some stuff jumped off, and that was how I got out of it. Just walk very calmly out of it.
Wow.
The things you know, the more you know. Do do do.
And it's helpful to have friends in places that can put you on to that kind of information too. So when you graduated,
Mhm.
um, tell us about what happened next.
So straight out of high school, um, almost immediately within the first year, I found myself at Karamu Theater. Um, and so, and I had been to Karamu to see shows, but I had never really contemplated being on stage there or I just kind of ended up there. I was doing a play at Tri C, Black History Show, and there was a woman there named Rosina. I'll never forget Rosina, um, who saw me in the show and said, "Hey, I'm going to be directing River Niger at Karamu. You should come audition." And went and auditioned. Sorry, my leg is itching. Um, I went and auditioned, and um, and got that part, and from there i I started auditioning for that was a smaller role in River Niger, but after that I started auditioning for only lead roles, and I would just keep booking all the lead roles in like every play. So I was like, all right, I think I have a knack for this acting thing,
Hey.
and I'm enjoying it. So I ended up doing about 3.5 years at Karamu, which was kind of my college experience because I didn't go to college, like go away to college. I did Cleveland State for a year as a theater major, and then I was like, I'm, why am I in school to be an actor when I could just go be an actor? So I decided to just drop out of school and just go be an actor. So I was at Karamu making no money. Um, until the last year I was there, they started a new children's theater program, and I was in the inaugural version of that program. Like when they first launched it, I was in that first year. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we would go around to all the different high schools and middle schools in Cleveland, doing like Aesop's Fables and other shows, shows about drugs and things like that. Um, and and some Shakespeare, and it was fun. It was fun. Uh, yeah, so I spent 3.5 years at Karamu. Then I started doing lighting work while
Mm.
I was at Karamu. I was like watching the guys backstage, and I was like, oh, I could probably do that, like the lights especially. So I ended up getting into lighting, and lighting then got me into the Stagehands Union in Cleveland. Um, and so when the CSU Convocation Center first opened, like when they first opened it, they first built it. I was the first master electrician, house electrician in that venue. Um, for the first year and a half or so. I was on a 3 year contract, but I was only there for a year and a half because in the course of working with the union, a play came through Cleveland at maybe the Palace Theater or the Ohio, one of those theaters downtown, and
Mm-hmm.
it was Shelley Garrett's Beauty Shop Part Two, and he needed a lighting guy on the tour. They had just lost their lighting guy, so I ended up leaving my house job and going on tour with Shelley Garrett doing his lights for the promise of then understudying roles in the show and potentially getting on stage, which I ultimately did get on stage several times with Beauty Shop Part Two. But then
Mm-hmm.
we did 460 city tours together. So Beauty Shop Part Two was the first of those four, and then he did three more shows. So the second show that I did with him, he actually wrote the lead role for me. So
Wow.
so I was the lead in that play and the production stage manager.
Wow.
It was a lot. I had
I
a
bet it
lot
was in 60 cities
60 city tours. Yeah.
per tour.
Yep.
Wow. But I'm sure you learned so much
Oh yeah.
during that time.
No idea. So I did theater for 8 years before I ever tried to do anything on camera.
Mm.
With the exception of like there was a short film I did that Rosina directed while I was still in my Karamu days. Um, that I did with my brother. Um, But other than that, I never tried to do anything on camera. I was just theater, 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 theater. And I love live theater, and I miss it a lot because I don't have the time to do it now.
Mhm.
But I love live theater.
So who were some of the people you met? while you were doing the theater circuit?
Um, well, while I was on tour with Shelly, excuse me, that first year, excuse me, that first year, my roommate on that tour was Michael Clark Duncan, who to me he was just Big Mike back then, you know. So for people that might not know who that is, right, like right offhand, if you saw the Green Mile, he played John Coffey, the really big deep voice guy. I can't do that voice. But you know, so Mike was my roommate on tour. He was the head of cast security, and he was also understudying roles in the show. And
Okay.
I was the production stage manager and master electrician, understudying roles in the show. So we were both doing like crew jobs, but we both secretly wanted to be on stage.
Mhm.
And even though we didn't talk about that with each other, um, so I didn't know Mike had like real actor aspirations for until years later,
Uh,
because by the time I moved to LA, he had already been in LA for about 2 years, and he really did kind of put me on. He put me on with my first agent when I got to LA. So
oh,
he is a little ahead of me in the pursuit. So yeah, he but by the time Armageddon came along and then the Green Mile, you know, his career just skyrocketed.
wow.
I miss him terribly.
Yeah, he was a light for sure while he was here. I'm sure he touched a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so when you came to LA, tell us about that experience. What
So
made you decide, okay, this is it, I'm doing it right now?
well, it was always the goal to get to LA. And there was even an opportunity when I was 19 to leave Cleveland and come to LA, but I was frankly I was scared and I didn't have any money saved or anything like that. So the thought of just going to LA on a pipe dream and no fiscal plan whatsoever was terrifying to me. So I didn't seize the opportunity then. So I didn't get to LA till I was 28. Um, and then by then I had saved money, put some stuff away specifically to come to LA. But when
Mhm.
I got here, I only knew so I knew my three cousins. So my cousin Greg, he and his wife had three kids. My cousin Phil, my cousin Iona, my cousin Linda, um, all live out here. Phil is maybe the most successful, well, certainly most successful actor out of the three. Um, so people would know Phil as Jackie Childs from Seinfeld, and
Oh, for sure. And
so
before that, I watched him on Young and the Restless.
oh yeah, he was on Young YNR, and like he was because he's like that chisel chin, handsome guy. So he spent years being the good looking guy. But now he's grateful now that he finally gets to be known as like for his craft. He's no longer the good looking guy. I mean he's still a good looking guy. So I knew my three cousins. I knew Michael Clark Duncan, and 2 weeks before I moved to LA, I met Heather Hunter, who was she was the black porn star in the '90s. So I knew so the people I really hung out with were Big Mike and Heather Hunter, and so like that first year, Heather was on everybody's list. So like everywhere we would go, like she and I became like really close. She was like my sister. And everywhere we would go, there was no waiting in line. She was just on the list, and we would just go into like every club, citywide.
Wow.
So I was just out clubbing the first year, and she knew so many people. Like I would like hang out with John Singleton and all kinds of cats that were on already, but still young in their careers.
Mhm.
So it was an interesting first year. Uh, and then I ended up taking a lighting job with Disney because the first 6 years I was living in LA before I managed to get on as an actor, I was still doing the lighting work. So I took a job with Disney that took me to Singapore and Taipei,
Oh.
doing lights for a show. Uh,
Hmm.
so so I was in LA for a year, then I left for about 8 months to go work in Southeast Asia, and then I came back. So I didn't start really booking acting work until 98, 99, and so I want to say from 99 to 2002ish, I might have booked four or five different things, and by 2002 I suddenly found myself in a position where I got on a little run for about 4 or 5 months where I just booked several things in a row.
Hmm.
And I kind of looked back after about 5 months had gone by and realized, oh, I'm a full time actor now. I haven't like I don't need to do the lighting work anymore, and I've never looked back again since 2002.
Wow, that's outstanding. I know when we first met um, in Long Beach all those years ago
Yep,
with your cousin,
yep,
and then I just kept seeing you.
yeah,
Like, hey, there's a Asante in the commercial. Hey, there's a Asante.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I have been extremely fortunate. I it's all in my bio, but I've been able to be a full time actor for 20 years because I book consistently, and that's without ever being a series regular or never been a series regular on anything that got picked up beyond a pilot, um, and not being a movie star or anything like that. I just work. I just been very fortunate and blessed to work consistently. And what's interesting about that is I just saw this clip from Viola Davis while she was on the tour, on the press tour for The Woman King, and she was saying how you know most actors would love to book a Geico commercial so they can make their health insurance, so they can make X amount of money. Said the simple truth is, the stat is that only 0.5% of actors that make $50,000 a year or more are black. 0.5% um,
That's a
that managed to
staggering
make
number.
that managed to make their health insurance every year, that work consistently and make 50,000 or more a year. 0.5% are black, and 0.027% or something like, I forget what that exact number was, but something like 0.027% are famous. Um, so are famous and black.
Hmm.
And so I was listening to her spout off that stat, and I was like, well, I'm one of the 0.5%, which is something I don't really think about,
Hmm.
but I've been really, really fortunate, um, because I'm still hungry for more, and there's so much more I want to do career wise. But I am an extraordinary success story, and I'm grateful.
Well, that's why you're here because we
Because
think you're dope.
well, you know what? When you're so close to it, and like I say, you have aspirations beyond what you've already done, it's easy to sleep on what you have done. Like it's such a constant day to day hustle and grind that I have to remind myself that I this effort has paid off like tremendously, tremendously. So really grateful, really grateful.
Wow. You've worked with a lot of big names, including Kathy Bates, Robin Williams, Morris Chestnut, and John Travolta. Is there anyone that you would absolutely love to work with that you haven't worked with yet?
Yes, there's several. But I mean, so there's directors that I want to work with. Like I would love to work with Spielberg.
Hmm.
There's, yeah, I'd say Kerry Washington, but I did do 11 episodes of Scandal, but
We saw you.
I never actually did a scene with Carrie, so I've never met Carrie. Um, so I would still like to work with Carrie. I think she brings a lot to the table. Google and Mbatha Raw, I think, is
Mhm.
wildly talented, like just ridiculously talented. Um, I think that Gina Prince Bythewood is re- remarkably talented. She is a brilliant director. I am
Mhm.
a fan. I've been a fan since Love and Basketball.
Right.
Like I remember when Love and Basketball came out. I was like, "This is the best movie of the year." I was like, "It's not gonna get nominated for an Oscar or anything." But that was the. I think that was the first time I had seen like a rom com that I felt really represented. I was like, "Wow!" Just that tugged the heartstrings all the right way. That had the right amount of comedy and drama and angst and man, I
Mhm.
love that experience. I loved it. Loved that movie. John Singleton would have been one because even though he and I hung out a lot, he never like. I think it was one of those situations where like he knew me, so he was like, I, I, I was hanging out with him right around the time Shaft came out, the Shaft remake with Sam Jackson, and so by then I had known him for I don't know 6, 7, 8 months, and we were hanging out at some club one night, and I was like, "So John Shaft, man, what's up?" And he was like, "You?" I was like, "Yeah, dude, I know you got somebody that's like Shaft. He went that way. I mean, like, I'm not saying I got to be Shaft, but yeah, you can put me in and be put me on." And he was like, "Nah, man, I don't think so." I was like, "What?" So, yeah, I would have liked to have worked with John. He didn't see me that way.
Mm,
So yeah, I mean, there's a ton of people I'd love to get
mhm.
to, a ton.
Well, if the Russo brothers ever do another Marvel movie,
Come on,
maybe. You have that Cleveland connection.
come on, come on. I mean, there's a ton of dudes and just men and women out here from Cleveland, in the business that are many of them wildly successful. Like I actually just did an episode of a show that will be coming out this spring, coming out, be premiering in a few months called Act Your Age, and it's with
Yes.
yeah,
Some
it's with
Cleveland women in that one.
exactly. It's with Kim Whitley and Tisha Campbell and Yvette Nicole Brown, and Kim and Yvette are both from Cleveland. Um, so we hanging out on set and we just talking about all things Cleveland. I mean, I mentioned 123rd St. Clair, and they was like, "Oh, you was in the hood." And I was like, "Yeah, I was in the hood." Um, uh, but man, I've known Yvette for 18 years, because her very first series regular, I should say, her very first series regular was on a Kevin Hart show.
I
Kevin Hart
remember.
had a very short lived TV show called The Big House that was like a reverse Fresh Prince, where he was a rich kid that was sent from Bel Air to live with his poor uncle in Philadelphia. Um, and uh, and I did one episode of that show, and I only had one scene, but it was a memorable scene. Like that scene stayed on my reel for many many years because it
Mm,
was funny. Um, and Yvette remembered me from that because she was like, "Yeah, I mean, like I said, we've known each other for 18 years, so we would always bump into each other, and she would always remember me as that guy that had that crazy funny scene on the one episode of her first series regular job." And she was like, yeah, it's just every time she thought about it, she would just crack up laughing, crack up laughing.
you made an impact on her,
Yeah,
a lasting one.
yeah, yeah.
um, what do you think is the most challenging part of being a working actor?
Um, well, there's levels to that. So I am a working actor who's not a series regular, who's not a movie star. Um, and so for me, the challenge is to be able to continue to do it consistently. Because many times I'll be on a job knowing what my next job is because I've already booked it. But then there are also a ton more times where I'm on a job and I don't know what my next job is going to be. So, being on set can be a little bittersweet because, you know, it, you're grateful to be here, but tomorrow I'm an unemployed actor again. You know,
Mm.
as I used to say to people all the time, uh, well, after tomorrow I'll be available for the rest of my life. So, who's got what going on? Um, but but there's been a little shift. I actually am a series regular now, on an animated show, on a Nickelodeon show that will that I'm conjecturing. I have not heard anything one way or the other, but I am guessing it will premiere sometime this spring.
Well,
It
congratulations.
thank you very much. It hasn't been
Awesome.
announced by the network yet, so I'm not allowed to mention it by name, but
Okay.
looking
Oh,
forward.
that's great. We can hear your voice even if we don't see you,
Yeah, yeah,
know it's you. So everybody look out for that.
yep, yep. So far, I've done 11 episodes. We've been picked up for 20, and so I have 9 more to do still.
What's the biggest difference in doing voice work versus on camera?
Well, as some of the people can probably see, there's a microphone sitting right here. I am in my little home studio here in the back of my house. Um, let's see, got my little light set up there, and you know,
Uh-huh.
turn this around. Oh, I messed it up. So you know, but the point is, I can record from home, and uh, I set this up when I was when the lockdown first began, the quarantine first began back in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the writing on the wall, and I was like, I should I should create a home studio,
Mm-hmm.
so I can because I feel like voiceover can survive this, can survive the pandemic. And sure enough, so the very first month, I built this setup here in the back of my house, and I want to say by July, this thing had paid for itself 10 times over. Because
Wow.
I had booked like commercials and voice jobs, and so I'll say that the biggest difference between voice work and on camera work is this is the easiest money I have ever made in my life. So you tell me, I just need to sit in front of a microphone and just talk, just just say things, and you'll give me tens of thousands of dollars. Okay, I mean,
I'll
yeah,
take that.
yeah, I'll take that. Sign me up. Sign me up. I'll take that every single day.
Mm.
Grateful.
Or do you miss the interaction with the other actors though? Or the crew?
Um, yeah, I mean, I still work on camera primarily, and often enough that um, I don't miss it because I mean it happens, often enough that um, you know, I'm still getting out there. So that's fun. Like I loved being on set for Act Your Age. I just did an episode of All American Homecoming that will I think it's gonna air sometime next month in February. Where I play a professor. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then I just shot a couple of commercials recently. Just this past summer, I was in this movie on Netflix called Purple Hearts. That was this really, really well executed love story um, between like a staunch GOP supporting military soldier guy and a very liberal musician singer, and they fall in love, and it's just a well told story. Um, and so when we were shooting it, it was this cute little indie film that the little indie film that could it was a really great experience. I worked with Sophia Carson and Nick Galitzine. Um, Galitzine. I'm sure I'm saying his name wrong. Um, but Sophia and Nick, carried the film for us, and they turned in such fantastic performances. Really connected with each other, with their characters, um, and as a result, Purple Hearts became the number seventh most watched movie in Netflix history. And I was like, we were all like, what? Like nothing. There's no explosions. There's no gunfire.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's gunfire. There's explosion because there's some war scenes, but um, it's not about that. Like that. Like it's not an action film. It's not. It is the number seventh most watched movie. Like if I had to equate it to something, I would say it's kind of like the modern day Grease. Like Grease was a phenomenon back in the 70s and 80s, early 80s. And Purple Hearts is kind of that. It's kind of music based. It's not a musical, but it's music based and has a lot of original songs in it, and just a great love story, and
Mhm.
it just resonates with people globally, and people love that movie. I was grateful to be a part of it.
What do you do to prepare for auditions? Do you have any rituals?
Rituals. No, I mean, one, I've always been a quick study. I attribute that to my theater days. So when I pick up, I get an audition and there'll be 12 pages of sides, 17 pages of sides. Like the biggest one I ever saw was 17 pages. Um, and that 17 pages, I had to self tape and it was due the next day, like the next morning at 10 a.m. But I've always been a really quick study. So I pick up these sides and read it over a few times. And my personal process is once I have an understanding of what it is I'm talking about,
Mhm,
once you know, the basics of, I know the relationships between the people in the scene, I know the given circumstance and situation that's taking place, I know the agenda that I'm trying to accomplish, that my other characters are trying to accomplish. So once I have the basics in place and I understand what I'm talking about, I develop an emotional connection to it so that the words they're just there for me. So memorizing things is not difficult for me once I understand it, which happens pretty quickly for me. So that's a blessing that I fall back on really consistently, um, which also can sometimes make me lazy about putting in extra work because I'm like, 16 pages, all right, whatever, I'll be ready in 20 minutes. I mean,
mhm.
um,
What
so
about your role in 911?
so so again, I mean, understand this, that 20 years into being a full-time actor, I have these 90 titles on IMDb and over 80 national commercials. What that means is that I've auditioned for thousands of things that I didn't get. Certainly hundreds, but probably another thousands at this point that I did not get. Um, so I'm familiar with the effort that goes into trying to get a job. And as a consequence, 911 comes along with some really weighty emotional material. I was actually, I'm not supposed to say this probably, but I was actually in Atlanta at the time. I was on vacation because it was like the world had just kind of opened back up in 2021. And I was like, I'm going to go to Atlanta. So I was visiting a friend in Atlanta. And because, I said on my tape that I was in LA, I was not. I was in Atlanta. I lied. But I uh, I understood what the character was going through, um, without even knowing all the details, because I didn't know like the whole story of that episode till after I got the job, and I was like, "Oh, this is a messed up episode. Oh no, oh man, these people going through it." I
Yeah.
mean, I didn't even know that when I was auditioning for it. I just understood that it was, a very difficult situation. This parents are, potentially losing a child that's in the hospital, and so I developed the emotional connection to it, and I've become very adept at self-directing. Um, so especially in this age of self tapes, that is a useful skill to have. I actually coach people for auditions. I've been doing that since 2011. I've been taping clients since 2011. I've made
Okay.
6 series regulars. Um, so you know, I understood what it was. I had to go to my friend's studio in Atlanta to record it, and that friend's friend, his name was Steve. Steve read with me, um, and he wasn't coaching me. He was just reading for me. So I was self directing the scene, and I only did like 2 takes. I read for 2 different characters, and I did 2 takes of each character's material. Um, And in both cases, I went with the second take. And Steve was like, wow, dude, watching you create an adjustment for yourself and then watching you execute it
Mhm.
was phenomenal to watch. Um, because I just, once I understand what it requires and what it should look like, and what it should feel like, then I'm pretty good at executing it. And whew, let me tell you something. There was nothing like shooting that episode. That was a heavy emotional week of shooting. And
It
specifically,
was heavy to watch as a viewer.
yeah,
So you brought the emotion
yeah,
to
yeah,
all of us who were watching. So
yeah. We
great
shot
work.
that scene where Hen tells us that no, it's actually our daughter that died. Spoiler alert: it was our daughter that died. Um, but when Hen gives us that news, we shot that scene 17 times because there's multiple actors and they had 4 cameras rolling, but there's so much coverage you have to get for this person, that person, and close up and medium shot and over the shoulder for this person and over shoulder for that person. And we shot that scene 17 times. And I'd say 15 times I got there emotionally.
Mhm.
It was a hard day. I've never had a day that hard on set. It was a hard day of shooting. There
Wow.
was there was a lot of crying involved. A lot of crying.
Well, the end result was amazing. So
Yeah.
kudos to you.
Thank you. Thank
Um, so what is the most exciting part about being a working actor?
you. Honestly, the free time. I mean,
Hmm,
you know,
that's
I
valuable.
yeah, I mean, I say to people, I feel like I've been on vacation for the last 20 years. Um, because I'm this is a hustle nonstop. I just recorded 2 self tapes before I came in here to do this
Mhm.
interview. Um, I wake up every morning and come back here to this room and record typically 3 to 6 voiceover auditions every single day.
Wow.
Um, I'm constantly pursuing this thing. But the truth is, on an average 7-day week, I've probably got a solid 3 days worth of time where I don't have anything on my schedule. Like and so I fill that time up by doing something,
Mhm.
whether it's reading something, watching a new series, going to the movies to see. I keep up with what other actors are doing, writers are doing, what directors are doing. Um, Everything is research. Like I managed to write everything off. Everything runs through my corporation. Um, so it keeps me busy, but at the same time, I don't feel like it's work. It is work. I am working, but it doesn't feel like work. I feel like I'm just on vacation. And to do an extraordinary callback, I do have the pool in the backyard now. So
Yay.
so I swim 3 miles a week
Uh-huh.
when I'm really being disciplined, and when it's not freezing cold outside, which it is right now.
Yeah,
Because like this time of year, I have to go swim at LA Fitness. But uh, I my time is kind of my own. I set my own schedule um, for the most part, and that's the best part about it for me.
for sure. Well, that's a blessing.
It is a blessing.
Um, Finally, what advice would you give to an up and coming actor?
Well, I could do you like my cousin Greg did me when I was 14. He came to Cleveland. He flew to Cleveland to take us to dinner to have a conversation with me. He heard that I wanted to be an actor. So he flew to Cleveland to come tell me, don't do it.
Oh,
Don't do it. He said, you'll always be too tall, too short, too fat, too skinny, too pretty, too ugly, too talented, too untalented, too black, too white to get every job you ever go in for. It is not designed to feed your artist's soul. There's nothing about this business of show business that is going to encourage you in any way, going to support you. Um, the artist in you will die a slow death. Don't do it. And I was like, but Greg, I love it. I don't know what else I would possibly want to do with my life. He said, then you hold on to that, you build on that, and when you get to LA, you call
Hmm.
me. And so I was 14 years later, I got to LA, and it was unfortunately 2 weeks after he passed away. Um,
Oh, wow.
so I was never able to take him up on that directly, but his children, Iona, Phil, Linda. I'm grateful for the cousins I have here in town that are also in the industry that look out for me tremendously, and at this point, we look out for each other.
Mhm,
So my advice is have a passion for it.
mhm,
Don't get into it haphazardly. Don't get into it because you want to be famous. Don't get into it because you want to be rich. Those things come as a result of having a passion for what you want to do because the business side of show business will eat you alive. And if you aren't passionate about it, you're going to want to quit. It's not a hobby. And people that think that it's easy, it's not. I just told you I shot that scene 17 times, one scene out of 8 scenes or however many scenes I was in that episode. One scene 17 times, and it was brutally difficult to tap into emotions that most people don't want to tap into.
mhm,
Um, you know, you're well, try not to get emotional now, but you're tapping into things that you don't want to think about in your day to day life. But the only way you're able to show up and do something like that on set is you spend time allowing those feelings to breathe. Um, so there's down times where I go to some dark places and let those moments live and breathe, knowing that someday I'll have to call on that. Don't get into it half heartedly. If you want to get into this business, do it because you love it. And you're only going to discover that you love it by doing. It's easy to look at it from the outside and think, oh, that would be cool. I'd love to do that. But you need to do in this industry, in this, not industry, in this passion. You need to do. You need to do a play. You need to um, write sketches and skits for your Instagram. You need to perform, and you
mhm.
need to discover whether or not you love it. And if you love it, then this is what you should do. But only if you love
That's excellent advice. Thank you. And thank you for taking the time out to be with me today. I really enjoyed talking to you. Um, I'm sure that anybody who watches this is going to immediately seek out all of your work so they can
it.
so they can see how great you and talented you are.
There's a treasure trove of stuff out there that some of it you're gonna have to search hard, high and low. Um, but there's stuff out there. There's even some stuff out there that I'm like, ooh, I wish I could take that one back. Every time I like, there's an episode of Monk I did back in the day, and I'm like, that is not my favorite performance. Like that's just me being critical of myself. I'm like, that's terrible. but
We all
but
have those moments,
yeah,
all of us.
yeah. Yeah. So thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you. I appreciate you. Um, and yes, people from Cleveland are dope. We out here. Um,
For
but
sure.
thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks again. Take care.
You too.